Good morning, everybody. November 1st, 2022. I'm Mike Nasa with the latest on the tropics, and we are active. Like I've said all year in La Nina years, the late season can be very active, and we have two tropical storms to prove that. Both are expected to become hurricanes, but only one should impact land. That is Lisa, sitting right here in the Caribbean Sea. Lisa is forecast to become at least a high-end Category 1 hurricane, maybe approach Category 2, before landfall near the Bay Islands of Honduras and into the coastline of Belize sometime late Tuesday, early Wednesday. We have a new tropical storm that was just designated by the National Hurricane Center. This is Tropical Storm Martin, and that's the first time we've used that name. Originally it was Mitch, which in 1998 killed tens of thousands of people in Central America. Then it was Matthew, which was a very deadly Caribbean hurricane in 2016. Hopefully and thankfully it looks like Martin is not going to be that, but it still could be a hurricane as it pushes on out there in the North Atlantic. So we'll talk about all of this. Here's the latest on Tropical Storm Lisa as of 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Lisa was at 16.3, 81.8. Winds up to 60, so it's a moderate tropical storm, and the forecast does have continued intensification into a hurricane. It is moving west at 14 miles per hour, and we do have watches and warnings out. I wanted to go through the list. We have a hurricane warning for the Bay Islands right here north of Honduras. They have a population, according to the internet, of about 65,000, so definitely an area to be impacted by potential hurricane winds. A hurricane watch from north of Puerto Barrios in Guatemala all the way up to Puerto Costa Maya, and that is with the expectation of it becoming a hurricane. We'll probably see those watches become hurricane warnings for the coastline of Belize sometime later today or tonight. We also have a tropical storm warning for the entire north coast of Honduras, the north coast of Guatemala right there, and areas there from Chetumal to Punta Herrero. And again, Guatemala, you forget that south of Belize and to the west of Honduras, there's a little spit of land there, and that is the Caribbean coastline of Guatemala. And with these systems approaching with possibly a southwesterly trajectory, you could have a landfall or at least an impact from hurricane winds. So we're going to watch this as the hurricane makes landfall Wednesday. Should be a Category 1, but it could be starting to strengthen more quickly. These waters are very hot, and the environment is getting better. After that, it should dissipate as it moves over Mexico. But again, if you're in areas here near the Gulf of Tehuantepec or the Bay of Campeche, watch it very carefully. Here's the visible satellite imagery, and there it is bursting right in there. And it's organizing. It's sputtering a little bit, but it definitely has a much better satellite appearance than it did when I spoke to you yesterday on Halloween, and it is bursting convection over the warm waters, and as the Hurricane Center said, continued intensification is expected. Note the outflow getting better organized there, especially on the northern side as the land masses are seen as it moves along. There's the Cayman Islands there, there's Jamaica, there is Nicaragua, and Honduras. Now, yesterday, all of the forecast models were taking it, kind of dissipating it and curling it around here over the Gulf of Tehuantepec and the Pacific side. Now some of them are curling it off towards the north and northeast, which would be more climatologically likely, getting picked up with a late-season cold front near the Gulf Coast, kind of jettisoning on off to the northeast. However, the general thinking is that it should dissipate over Mexico, but there's always a chance it could spit around land here and cause more heavy rainfall, and that would be the main threat with this system, or that it could pull off to the northeast and maybe head towards areas of the Yucatan and Cuba, maybe even bring moisture to Florida. Right now, we're not seeing a lot of that on the model guidance, so Lisa should move in and weaken, but not before becoming a hurricane to deal with. There's the infrared satellite. Not as strong convection as we get here during the diurnal minimum. Overnight, it tends to burst more during the maximum. We saw very deep gray convection, very cold cloud tops indicative of strengthening. Now we're seeing it kind of warm up a little bit. However, it's organizing structurally more to be able to strengthen. Again, right now it's a tropical storm down here. It is forecast to become a high-end Category 1 hurricane, so we're talking about some damage, but if it strengthens quicker, it could get more into the Category 2 range, which is getting closer to extensive. And remember, the building codes in southern Belize are not the same as they are in southern Florida, and so a 90-mile-an-hour hurricane in Belize could pack a little bit more of a wallop than if it hit, say, Sanibel Island. So we're going to continue to watch Tropical Storm Lisa. Martin, just christened this morning by the National Hurricane Center, way up there at 35.3 north, 55.9 west, winds of 50. So it's already a moderate tropical storm. This was the low pressure I told you was looking good yesterday. It finally achieved tropical characteristics. So it is a tropical storm, and moving east at 12 miles per hour as it gets caught up here, it should have enough organization to become a hurricane, and then eventually an extratropical system with hurricane winds by the weekend, moving way up there into the far reaches of the North Atlantic. So it looks like we're going to get 2 November hurricanes, Lisa and Martin. Didn't I tell you the late season was going to be active? There's the visible, obviously a well-organized, vigorous circulation there, getting tropical characteristics. Now, there is some indication that it's going to continue to pull into the northeast and then maybe loop around out here in the far North Atlantic as a very powerful post-tropical cyclone. That is possible. The wind shear is an issue, but the reason it's not going to affect it as much is because the storm is moving in the same direction as the shear. If the shear is going from southwest to northeast and the system is moving from southwest to northeast, sometimes the system could strengthen in spite of the shear. You know, when we saw that with Hurricane Ian back in September, the shear was like that, but Ian was moving like that in the same direction, and it allowed Ian to bubble into that monster hurricane that devastated South Florida this year. Definitely the highlight of the year. We could hope that there's nothing else like that this hurricane season. I don't think there will be. Nevertheless, with Lisa down here getting that anticyclone, the high pressure aloft that's in the upper atmosphere, it gets a clockwise flow around it. So you have the counterclockwise spin at the low levels of the tropical storm or hurricane, and then you have the clockwise flow in the upper levels ventilating it. And it's in a much better environment than it was yesterday, and when you combine that with warm waters and tightening up, it should become a hurricane. So again, in the final analysis, we're going to watch Martin up here, probably a hurricane in a few days, moving on off. There's absolute no way this gets towards the United States with the flow off the East Coast continuing, a very fall-like weather pattern starting to take shape. But to the north of Lisa, we have the high pressure building in, and that is steering Lisa straight to the west, and it should continue that right into Belize, becoming a hurricane of at least Category 1 strength. We're going to watch it very carefully. Everybody in Belize and the northern coast of Honduras should be overlooking their hurricane plans. I'm Mike Naso with the latest on tropical storms Lisa and Martin, and I will talk to you guys next time.